Hey everybody, Rodman here for a new Stellaris series. In this series, it will be a Let's Play, but I'm going to attempt to explain as thoroughly as I can everything that I'm doing in the game without unnecessarily slowing the gameplay down. So it's not exactly going to be a tutorial series, but I'll be going over a lot of sort of tutorial-y things, if I can use that word. I kind of made it up while playing. So I'm going to start a new game and create a new civic, or a new species, rather. So for appearance, I'm going to pick Space Dwarves. Why not? And then species name, Triac. Why not? That sounds very techy. That kind of works with what I have in mind. Name lists. So species name is purely cosmetic, as is appearance. There's a few exceptions. If you pick machine, it will assume that you're going to be synthetic, which changes the way your species works fundamentally. Prefix names is just how things get named. So I'm going to do humanoid. Let's see, humanoid 3 seems sort of like techie. And then my ship prefix will be TE for Triac. Why not? So traits. This is very important. These can be changed through effort. They can be changed in game, but it is very important for you to have an idea in mind. So my idea is for my space dwarves. I plan on them being sort of very high tech, high unity, or high science, high unity. Now, if this doesn't make sense to you, it will in game if you're new to Stellaris. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be designing my species to be very high-tech and high unity. That's going to be my focus, which means taking intelligent as a tech, and then also I'm going to want to take traditional and probably also communal. But now, as you can see, I have 2 picks left and -2 trait points, which means I need to take some negatives. So I'm going to take sedentary. And I need one more -1. Actually, I'm going to take non-adaptive. Non-adaptive is a habitability 1. Yeah, and I'm good with that. So for homeworld, these Triac Prime. Let me make sure I'm spelling that right. TRIECH. Yes. These homeworlds don't really matter because there is equal distribution of all types of worlds throughout the galaxy, or at least there should be. There is some randomness involved. But one thing is that if you pick a dry world, it'll be easier to colonize dry. If you pick a wet world, it's easier to colonize wet. And if you pick a frozen world, it's easier to colonize frozen. But there's no actual benefit to being continental, for instance, over desert. There's literally no benefit. So it's not like starting in continental will give you a natural benefit because it's a nice balanced planet. Because you have to remember that your species is custom tailored to whatever that you end up picking. So I think I'm going to go with Alpine. These seem to be the most dwarf-like with the mountains and like whatnot. And then for city appearance, not that this matters either, but because I'm high tech, I think either mammalian or reptilian. I'll go with reptilian because this kind of looks elvish, elven, whatever you want to call it. All right, so I would say that traits and ethics are some of the most important. Traits can change, but ethics can't really. There are some ways you can change ethics late game, but you don't have a lot of control over it. There are some ways to become, for instance, more spiritual or more militaristic, but they're not easy to trigger. They're not always offered. So you should design your civic, your empire, as if your ethics will never change. So for this playthrough, I'm going to do fanatic materialist and egalitarian. There's also something to consider. Gestalt consciousness will fundamentally change the playstyle. It won't allow happiness. It won't allow factions. These are all core to the game. So picking Gestalt Consciousness is a very different playstyle. In my opinion, it's a little bit easier because you won't have factions and happiness and other things like that. Also, your leaders are immortal. But for this playthrough, I'm going to do Fanatic Materialist and Egalitarian. Another thing to consider is you can't pick two opposites. So if I'm a materialist, I can't also be a spiritualist. If I'm a pacifist, I can't be a militarist, and so on and so forth. So fanatic materialist means that my robot upkeep is decreased and my research speed is increased. And egalitarian means that my factions can produce more influence. I'll explain that later. And that my species require less consumer goods. And then I'm going to be... Then you have to pick a government type, and I'm going to be democratic. And democratic will allow me to pick the Beacon of Liberty, which is a boon to monthly unity. And then my second one, I'm going to be mechanist, which gives me some robots that I start with. Advisor voice is just the way...
No, it'll be fine. I'm telling you, just turn off the fail-safes and... Wait.
It's just the way your advisor's voice is. It really has no bearing. Same with Empire name. These are all sort of cosmetic. So Alliance of Triac Prime. That's good for me. I'm sort of tech robot, so let's pick a tech robot flag. That works. Ship appearance. Mammalian looks fine. Ruler. Doesn't really matter if I'm male or female. To me. Hairstyle, none of this really matters. It's all cosmetic, and because I'm not an immortal leader, this will change every 10 years or less anyway. I'm going to save my species, and then set up the galaxy. So I'm going to set up the galaxy to be small. Sometimes I like really long, expansive games, but for this playthrough, I'm going to go with small. I'm going to max out how many AI empires will be generated. I'm maxing out fallen empires. Now, an empire is just a rival or an ally, right? It's just, they are just like you. They start off just like you. A fallen empire is one, it's like a slumbering giant. They're very, very, very strong, but for whatever reason, and they're hyper powerful, but they stagnated and they kind of went to sleep. So they're very, very tough sort of empires, and you don't want to piss them off early game. They're kind of max tiered research and all that, but they generally don't meddle with you. Marauder empires are not, they're about half as strong as a fallen empire, but they meddle with you a lot. I like to have them just because it's an interesting gameplay mechanic. Now, tech and tradition cost is basically how fast you gain science and technology. I leave that at 1. Habitable worlds is how many habitable worlds there are. I like there to be very, very few habitable worlds so that you fight over the worlds that exist. Crisis strength is how strong certain crisis events will be. I'll keep this at 1. I might regret that. And then mid-game and end-game is when the mid-game crisis can happen and the end-game crisis can happen. These crises sort of throw the whole galaxy into disarray with some sort of crisis. And I'm not going to spoil it. We'll just see what kind of crisis I get. Now, AI aggressiveness, I'm going to set on normal rather than the high that I had on default. Generally speaking, I like to have my games as difficult as possible, but I really don't like this kind of difficulty slider, which is just the enemies get stronger and there's nothing you can do about it. It's not that they're smarter, it's just that they get all these invisible bonuses that, and I don't really like that. I think that's sort of a bad way to increase difficulty, is that the enemies just get a huge bonus that is, that can't be countered or anything. And then the last important things I'm going to have is really low hyperlane density, which means there will be a lot of very key choke points. Same with abandoned gateways and wormhole pairs. That just allows you to warp to certain areas. I don't like to turn them off, but I like to keep them at a minimum. And we'll start the game and set up the galaxy. So right at the start here, there's a lot of things to probably do before you unpause the game. So one thing I like to do initially, especially, I don't have a very big starter world, but that's okay. What I like to do initially is to build a monument that gives me unity. That's the first thing I do. And then the next thing I do is going to build with my construction ship a mining base. So I guess I should try to explain. Energy, minerals, and food are kind of the general currency. Food feeds your population. Energy keeps buildings running and robots running, and minerals allows you to expand. So what I did initially is I built something that gives me unity, which I'll explain in a little bit, and also expanding my economy. The next thing I'm going to do is to look at my leaders. So I have one decent researcher, and then I'm actually going to switch around two of my leaders. So I'm going to have my science ship leader be the one that levels up faster, and then have my scientists be the other leaders. So my best leader, my best researcher rather, is this guy who gives me 5% research speed to everything. So let's pick a research for him. Actually, let's see. I might move him around a bit too. Yeah, I'm going to put my best researcher into societal research. For heritage site, which allows me to produce more unity. My whole species focuses on science and unity, so I'm trying to maximize the amount of unity I can get. Now for physics research, I'm going to pick fusion reactors. Actually, yeah, fusion reactors. And then for engineering research, I'm going to go with engineering facility. My shipyard, I'm not going to do anything with yet. It's just going to remain idle. And then my science ship is going to start surveying towards choke points. Like that. And I can now unpause the game. You don't have to do this, but I like to do Map the Stars Edict. It costs a hell of a lot of influence, but I really love anomalies. I think they're very, very powerful and often overlooked. One more thing I'm going to do before I start all this is go to Species, go to my Triac, set rights, and set the living standards to academic privilege, which increases their happiness and increases their scientific output. So now if I look back to a scientist, they get 10% additional research because of academic privilege, and then they get 2.5% additional research because of happiness, which is pretty powerful stuff. So my leader of my entire civ allows me to get outposts and star bases cheaper, which is really cool. And then also gives me a little bit extra energy credits, which is also pretty cool. And I can speed the clock up a bit. So right off the bat, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to plan to expand your homeworld, expand your territory, and start surveying around, as well as queue up research. So before I get too far, I'm going to slow the game down. So science is pretty straightforward. What it is, you're given a few different options for research, and you have to basically pick one. Unity is a little different. Unity is sort of traditions. So as you can see, in 25 months, I'm going to unlock my first tradition. And then I can pick from one of these 7 trees: expansion, domination, prosperity, harmony, supremacy, diplomacy, and discovery. Generally speaking, I start with discovery. because the bonuses of discovery are far less useful late game than they are early game, whereas all the other ones are useful. I guess expansion is more useful early game as well, but discovery is tends to be the one I do first, and the reason for it is I like anomalies and I like surveying, and discovery gives me both really early on.
Construction project concluded.
So if you're looking at the overlay here, the white numbers are untapped resources, and the greens are tapped. So in my home system, I still have physics research and energy credits that I could tap for build bases on. So what I'm doing is I'm having my construction ship move. I don't have enough resources to build a mining station over the energy, but I'm having my construction ship move into position so that when I do have enough resources, I can build that without having to have him travel. Up here, there's also how much research you're getting total. So as you can see, I'm already getting more physics than anything else.
Construction project concluded.
So I'm going to pause it for a moment. The construction project that concluded was my monument that gives me unity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull one of my population from the energy that they're gathering to go to unity. That means I'm going to get a lot less energy per turn, but a lot more unity. So previously it was like 20, well, let's see how much it was. I was getting a tradition in 21 months, and I cut that from 21 to 12 months, which is huge. It's an enormous boon, as you can see. That does mean that I'm going to get fewer energy credits, but I'm not going to worry about that at this point in time. Another thing I'm going to want to do is to build a robot. So I'm going to have these robots that coexist with my people, my Triac people, to specialize in mining. Now, they start off with 10% mining, but you can push that specialty even further up to, you can mod those robots to get even more minerals, which is pretty handy. More bang for your buck for resources. So now what I'm doing here is I'm just sort of waiting for more resources to trickle through so that I can build and expand. I need 90 to get the energy, 90 minerals to get the energy mining base. That's probably the next thing I do. I could also look at my leaders. Each leader has a trait. They can gain more than one trait. They can gain quite a few, in fact. They tend to only gain up to
System survey concluded.
2 or 3 at most. But the primary trait is the most important.
Tile blocker cleared.
Because it's the one you can rely upon. Another thing to note is all of these sort of hazard signs are called tile blockers, and they'll prevent you from using and expanding to the resource they're protecting. So this one, for instance, is food. This is societal research. The one I just cleared is for minerals. And I wanted to clear that tile blocker so that I can utilize this spot for minerals sometime in the future. So at the end of every month is when your surpluses or whatever, your influence, your unity, your minerals, energy, food, all that sort of recalculates. It is monthly. So I gain 1 energy and 15 minerals per month. And that is sort of the limit. Now, one thing I could do is there is a lot more minerals that can be potentially collected from this territory than what I start off with, but I need a mining network built there. So that's probably the next thing I'm going to save up for. So in one more month, I'll have enough. So at June 1st, I'll have enough for that mining network.
Anomaly found.
One thing I'm going to do is to have my survey ship, this one, the Euriplar, or whatever it's called, not do anomalies. So what anomaly is, it's some sort of unusual scientific thing that needs to be analyzed for a certain period of time to provide some bonus. I want my survey ship just focusing on survey because it's important for me to find all of the bottlenecks as fast as I can. And I can research these anomalies at my convenience. And anomalies generally don't benefit you unless you own the territory. Some anomalies will provide you a benefit regardless. Alright, so what just happened here is I got my first tradition, which means I'm going to use it to unlock discovery. The adoption effect of discovery is I find more anomalies. Once an area is fully surveyed, you can't find more anomalies there. So anomalies can only really be found early game when there's still territory and things left to discover. But once the whole map has been searched by, not just by you, but by any player or AI, you've hit a wall. You will not find any additional anomalies. So that's why I tend to like to get science early game, because it's, if, for instance, it was the last thing you were to unlock, it would not be helpful to you at all. It's only really helpful early game. So now if we mouse over our ship here, we have a 30% additional increased chance to find anomalies, which is pretty good. Now, each anomaly that you find is sort of rolling the die of whether it's going to be useful to you or not. So it's entirely possible that you end up finding and unlocking a bunch of anomalies that are kind of worthless. And so be it. You know, if that is to happen, at least you tried to find good anomalies, but there's no guarantee. And then this was just a little alert that my science ship that's surveying leveled up. And the higher level you are, the faster they can research anomalies and survey. So his survey speed just went up, which is good. I'm going to build the last physics research station in my home system and then start moving towards Pavag.
Construction project concluded.
So now, before I was getting 4, or really, let's call it 3.51 minerals per turn per month, and now I'm going up to 5.86 with that little change there. So as you can see, I go from 15 to 17 up here. Doesn't sound like much, but these numbers add up pretty quickly when you're min-maxing, right? The next min-max I can do for energy credits is to get a trading hub in my space port or starport. So I have a maximum number of colonies that I can directly control set to 3. My naval capacity is set to 20, and my starbase capacity is set to 3 as well. You can exceed these, but then you start paying much, I guess, to put it, higher taxes on them for each additional one that you have. So if I had 4 worlds that I directly controlled instead of 3, I'd be paying out the nose for it. And each additional one is even more cripplingly more expensive. So it is, I guess to say, unwise to exceed your maximum unless you need to, either temporarily or for whatever purposes.
System survey concluded.
Military or otherwise. I'm also maxed for food right now, which what that will allow me to do when I sit as maxed is it puts the surplus and helps my populations grow. So normally I would increase this max, but because I really want to grow my population quickly, I'm going to keep it as is. So the way to expand your territory is to build star bases, and you can build. It's cheapest to build star bases in directly hyperlane adjacent systems. The further jump you make, like this one costs 158, whereas this one costs 94, whereas this one will cost 30. It doesn't really cost 30. I'm already colonizing it or building a starbase there. But ideally, you're going to want to expand your territory to your adjacent territory. If you do jumps, you should probably have a good reason to jump. So if I, instead of getting this territory next, I immediately got Saramore, there should be a really good tactical reason why I'm leaving Ionides
Construction project
unclaimed.
completed.
And generally speaking, it's probably a bad idea. And then once you've built, I'll explain what this is in a second. Once you've built the starbase, then you can start exploiting the resources that are part of that system. So this is a quest chain that everyone will get. Basically, it is you have to seek various sort of anomalies that are linked to a precursor civilization that disappeared.
Situation log update.
And the way to find this quest chain is up your situation log, which is also F3. And the quest chains have you find 6 artifacts that point you to their homeworld. And I also have a quest chain called Miner Mandate, which is for me to build mining stations, which I'm currently doing with my constructor anyway, so I'm not going to worry about focusing on that. I'm already doing it. So as you can see, I am focusing on trying to get to natural choke points.
Construction project concluded.
So I just got, the message I just received was that I've built another robot. So as you can see, I went from 17 to 20 minerals, and my minerals are only ever going to go up higher and higher and higher the more I exploit the resources on my home system. So I just queued up another robot to be built, and this will be the last robot I build. My robots are my miners, so I don't have any more minerals left on my homeworld system, so I'm not going to obviously build more robots.
Construction project concluded.
Now another thing you might have noticed is when that robot was built, my energy credits went into the negative. I have 115 months before they hit 0, roughly speaking, not exactly. But so it's not something I'm going to worry about immediately. But one of the things this construction ship is going to do is start to exploit these 2 energy for the bases. So I'm not worried about that. I also found an anomaly. I'm going to ignore all anomalies for the time being. And then I unlocked another tradition. So this tradition, I'm going to go and get to Boldly Go, which gives me survey speed, so that I survey even faster. And surveying faster will allow this leader to level up faster, and also for me to find out what's out there quicker. So it has a lot of sort of hidden benefits. Also, my population's about to grow into this energy plant, which will put me from -1 to about 3 or 4 in just now. So now I'm +3. Which is pretty good. Do not neglect energy early game. It can really put a damper on your ability to expand. Minerals primarily is used to expand your territory, and energy is used to support the expansion. So if you have a lot of minerals but not a lot of energy, you have the, you'll have basically the capacity to expand a lot, but not the economy to actually support the expansion. So you'll deflate a bit. I am clearing the tile blockers to allow for additional usage of these territories, because once I have enough energy credits, I might as well go ahead and do that. And then this ship here is building a mining station on this planet, which will give me 2 energy.
Project concluded.
Then I'm going to queue him up to build the last station there before I expand my territory down to Ionides. Another thing I'm going to want to get
Tile blocker cleared.
relatively soon, as you saw, that giant skill jump there was when I was clearing these tile blockers. Everything you do can level up. Everything you do positively can level up your scientists or leaders in general. So you have governors, scientists, admirals, and generals. Your governors are going to be leveled up by governance. Your scientists are going to be leveled up by research and anomalies and stuff like that. All your leaders will gain experience over time naturally, but the more sort of events, the more big projects and stuff like that you can have them do, the faster they'll level. To some degree. So anomalies, for instance, have multiple levels. This is a level 1 anomaly. This is level 3 and 2 anomaly, or 3 anomaly. You can have like a level 10 anomalies. So if I had a really inexperienced scientist try to research a level 10 anomaly, it will take so long that it's possible that he'll die before he even gets it done within his own lifetime. So there is a limit to, how big of a bite you should try to take, so to speak. So now I have this construction ship building a starbase over Ionides to try to expand my territory once again. But one thing that I am feeling is that I feel like I need another scientist. So I think the top one here, which lives an extra 25 years, might be the next scientist I recruit. Another thing I'm going to want to do is to build construction projects on the places that I'm getting population growth. So I have a robot building here, which I'll turn into mining, and I have one of my dwarves spreading here, which I'll turn into power plants. Generally speaking, it's best to build construction projects that exploit the resource that is already there to a degree. For instance, you don't need
system survey concluded.
You don't need such an unbelievable surplus of food. So if there are tiles that have food, but you already have a big food surplus, you might end up basically ignoring the fact that the tile is set up for food and put research or mining or something else there instead. So you're not always necessarily exploiting the natural resource that exists. But for energy and minerals, it tends to be the smart choice. But it's not the only choice. Periodically, you're given a different set of options for leader recruitment. So I tend to find myself checking to see if I am being offered better leaders. Now, I can't recruit anyone until I have about 100 energy credits. Some leaders are cheaper to recruit.
Research concluded.
Now, I have got my first research. So what will end up happening, if I want to see what I researched, is engineering facility. And then it will unlock 3 researches more or less at random that I already have the prerequisites for. So given these 3 options, I tend to, maybe I'll go with afterburners. And I also at the same time unlocked a tradition. So looking at the options I have, I can either unlock another tradition here, but I don't really need colony development speed. I don't have a big fleet and a lot of buildings, so I don't need this. What I tend to do is focus on one whole tree. So between the choices of databank uplinks, which I'm not going to use for a while. That allows a scientist that has nothing left to do, or rather, it allows a scientist to basically assist the research on the home planet. It's pretty strong, but early game you're probably going to want to be surveying rather than doing assist research. So I'm going to go with science division, which gives me more options for research trees, which I find pretty handy.
Anomaly found.
And then, yeah, so let's see what just happened. My governor leveled up. My planet's mining network finished. It looks like this gives me more minerals than that tile, so I switched my robots around. My construction ship built a mining base over Ionides, so I'm going to queue him up to wait idle over a new potential mining base. And then, additionally, I got research for engineering. And I have an engineering science lab, so I'm going to, once I have the resources to, level up the science lab to be an engineering lab. The one thing to keep in mind is it's often pretty helpful to try to keep all of your research at roughly the same levels, so you don't fall behind in something, unless you want to. So, for instance, if you know that you want to specialize in, let's say, physics research, yes, you could build a lot more physics science labs, physics labs than other labs. And you'll, of course, greatly pull ahead in physics, but that might leave your societal and engineering research to fall behind. So you could have the best lasers in the game on your ships, but your ships could have seriously lacking armor as a result. So there is a sort of nice balance of having sort of the same amount of research across the board. But, in special circumstances, it might actually benefit you to focus on one type of research, depending on where you want to take that research and how it benefits your society. So there are definitely some scenarios where you'd want to hyper focus on one type of research. But that's sort of an advanced way to play. I wouldn't necessarily suggest it to everyone. Now I have enough influence to get another piece of territory. So, but then I also have a lot of resources that I haven't tapped here. So I have to kind of decide which I want to do. So that construction project was this power plant, and I can pause it and see if this power plant yields me more energy, but it doesn't. So I'm not gonna worry about that. Because if you look, both of these tiles naturally give you +2. Both of the power plants are level 1, so these power plants are going to be significantly different from one another.
Construction project concluded.
Now, instead of expanding my territory, I'm going to try to exploit all the resources that I have there.
Concluded.
And I was just unlocked fusion reactors, which allow my ships to generate more power for weapons, shields, engines, and the like. And my next research is going to be research speed. It's a pretty safe one to go with. Now, because I started with fission reactors and now I have fusion reactors, my ships can upgrade. You can also manually design your ships. So if I turn off auto-generate designs here, I can choose what they have directly, which often is a better way of going about it. That way you can design your ships. So with that in mind, I'm actually not going to upgrade my fleet just yet, because they generate more power, which would marginally increase the damage their weapons do, but it would honestly just make the ships more expensive for very little benefit. which is why I'm holding out. Now, once I unlock more research like afterburners increase the evasion and the physical movement speed of my ships, but they'll also require more power. That's when I might think about incorporating, a higher level reactor. But there's very little benefit to incorporating a higher level reactor right now. Other than just increasing the cost. So now that I have a nice surplus of energy or of minerals, I'm going to go ahead and build a trading hub on my homeworld.
Construction project.
This will increase the energy credits my starport generates by 4, which is pretty handy. Those should not be ignored. You can only build trading ports, and they might be called something else depending on your civic, but you can only build them on space stations that orbit planets with population. So I usually will focus building trading ports on said planets. I even move my shipyards off of my homeworlds for that reason. So you start off with a shipyard and a crew quarters, and eventually I'm going to move a shipyard elsewhere so that my home system can be solely dedicated to trading ports and that sort of benefit. As you can see right now, I do need the trading port because I only have 1 surplus energy credit, which is really pretty bad. That's generally only 1.6 per turn, and it's only going to get worse as this this construction ship builds this research base. It's going to go to 0.6 gain because that research base will take 1. So now, as I predicted, I'm at 0.6 gain.
Construction project concluded.
But alas, I've built the trading hub and I'm back up at +4. 4.6. So there's always this struggle of the more you expand, the more energy it will take. So neglecting energy in lieu of minerals, yes, sure, you'll have the mineral capacity to expand quickly, but you won't have the energy to support such an expansion. So one of the big things I'm saving up for is a new scientist. So December 1st, I'll be able to hire a new scientist. So what I'm going to do now is start to build the science ship for that scientist. And December 1st rolled around, I just hired the scientist. And this will allow me to do twice the surveying and twice the anomaly research and all that, given that I'll have 2 in just a minute here. This symbol here means that there are clearable blockers that are hindering growth. So as you can see, I have my last population growing into the last open cell I have on my homeworld. And if I want my population to grow any further, when he fully grows within, let's say 48 months or so, I'll have to clear another blocker. So I just made this science ship, and what I'm going to start doing with him is to survey west, because I certainly have a nice long path to the east, but I've been neglecting my westward search for territory and bottlenecks. Also, I'm going to want to go south as well.
Project concluded.
So here is one instance of min-maxing. I've unlocked this new territory. I could build research and mining bases here. Between a 3 and a 2, I'm always going to want to build a mining base on the 3 first. Why have less when you can have more, is sort of my thinking.
Anomaly found.
Now, these sort of anomalies will never time out. They never disappear. So they'll always be available for you to research. So there's really no rush necessarily to get them. It is smart to get them when, especially when they're within the borders of your own territory. But so like for Ionides, for instance, but I'm in no particular rush to grab it because, primarily because all my scientists are doing other equally important tasks, like surveying the borders of my empire. Now, if you hold shift, of course you can't see my hand, but if you hold shift, you can queue up tasks for any ship, anything to do next.
Anomaly found.
So if I hold shift like this, if I had enough resources, I could then queue up also next a research, or queue up movements, so on and like that. Now, of course, I'm not going to want to just travel around randomly. That doesn't really benefit me. But if, for instance, there was a stationary enemy on one spot, I could queue up movement to circumnavigate that enemy safely. That might be a reason to queue up a lot of movements. The queue up is more useful for when you're surveying. So, for instance, I'm surveying a chain of solar systems, both east and west, and because I have them queued up, I don't have to issue them every time they finish with one area. So when Stellaris is finished, this ship will automatically move towards this unknown system and start surveying it without being prompted to, which is quite nice.
System survey concluded. Construction project concluded.
Now what I'm doing is, anytime I have
Research concluded.
energy or minerals sufficient enough for some sort of expansion, I try to jump at the opportunity for expansion. So now that I have, as I said, I've unlocked the tradition of research alternatives. If you look at my societal research, I'm being given 4 options instead of 3, which is the bonus for having that research division. So one of the things that I just unlocked is heritage sites, which is basically upgraded autochthon monuments, which will give me more unity per month than what I currently am yielding, which is, I would say, pretty important. So instead of having this construction ship build another societal research there, I'm going to save up for this this building that I'd rather have. That, of course, leaves this construction ship idle, but I can position him in orbit around the last area that I'd like. Right, so now I can build my heritage site.
System survey concluded.
And I have another tradition. I'm going to go with Polytechnic Education, which increases my leader's level up or experience gain. Pretty handy stuff.
Fleet enhancement supplied.
So I just upgraded my fleet, not for really any good reason. At the moment, they're still sort of auto-generating their ship's design, but eventually they're going to be given access to parts. Especially when I'm in a war, I'm going to want to basically be designing my own ships
Situation log
manually. So sometimes you're given the opportunity to do sort of quest chains. Like this one, I need to survey 8 habitable worlds. It was probably triggered from when I researched Breek, or when I when I surveyed Breek, and it was a habitable world, and then some scientists said, "Oh, wouldn't it be a good idea if we had like a catalog of these worlds?" So then I started on a quest chain to get more. So, for instance, here's a ocean world level size 9. It's a pretty it's honestly a very terrible world, but surveying it will add to that quest chain. And generally speaking, the benefits of completing a quest chain outweigh the decline of a quest chain. So it will also give you an option to say, no, I don't want to do this quest chain, but generally that's kind of a quick little bonus, whereas completing it is a much larger bonus. I guess what I'm saying is, when you're offered quest chains, probably do them, but some quest chains can lead to bad things. It's rare, but it does happen that a quest chain will lead you down a path you won't want to be led down.
Project concluded.
But that's, as I say, that's a pretty isolated, rare scenario. There's only a few quest chains like that. So if you're not sure what the quest chain offers, if it's kind of a mystery, you can always use the Stellaris Wikipedia page to try to figure out how that quest chain concludes. All right, so I just got research speed. So if you look at all, if you mouse over here, administrative AI is giving 5% research speed to all of my research, which is great. So the next thing I'm going to want is maybe a physics lab. I like to get the labs pretty early on, prioritizing them over most of the other research.
Construction project concluded.
So now, as you can see, I have the heritage site, which gives a lot more unity. So my unity gain, I don't know what it was before, but it went up a pretty measurable amount just now. Another big thing I should probably do fairly soon is to expand my territory over Breek and then colonize the Alpine world that's there. Expanding and colonizing early on it tends to be pretty important. So that's not something to neglect. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to build a construction ship to claim this territory rather than to recall the one at Fulaz all the way back, because that could take some time. It also helps to have multiple ships doing.
Blocker cleared. Nature will not stand in the way of progress.
Just taking a look,
project concluded.
Trying to survey the more important choke points first. So here's that ship that I wanted, and I can, with 0.133 more minerals, build a starbase over here. My real bottleneck will be my influence, because it costs 63 influence for each additional territory. Now, one thing to note is that each additional colony and territory that you control increases the cost of traditions and science. So if I want to unlock a tradition, each tradition that I already have unlocked increases it. So instead of, if I went and unlocked one of everything, it would be much more expensive to gain traditions than if I unlocked everything in one tree and then moved on to an next tree. And then each additional system that I control, so right now I control 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, increases by 4% how much unity I need for the next tradition. And then that's also true for science. So if I look at my science, the amount of science I need, which should be here, because I control 5 systems, or 4 additional systems, I need 4 additional % research to be able to unlock that research. So being a really, the concept is tall and wide. Being a really tall empire has its benefits over being a really wide empire, but it is more expensive to go tall than wide. It is far cheaper to just keep branching out like a fungus or a mold and conquer wide than conquer tall. Tall requires a lot more research and a lot more investment. However, if you go tall, if you go tall and you do it well and efficiently, you can surpass your rivals' science, technology, and traditions very, very, very rapidly if done right. It's just harder to do. Another way to go tall is to just get the systems that have a lot of resources, like Gomesia or Gomesia, because one Gomesia is worth more than like a Tiblik and a whatever Turius, and it will give you a lot of bang for your buck, getting that one system that provides a lot over a system that does not.
Construction project concluded.
So now that I have claimed this system, I can now build and exploit those resources there. I'm still, in the back of my mind, trying to save up towards a colony ship, so I should start putting away 300 minerals to do that. Sometimes I find myself wanting to always spend minerals and never amass it, and generally that's a good idea, but in this case it's not, because a colony ship in the end will help me a lot more than just if I build a few extra mining bases or whatnot. A few extra mining bases aren't going to be mission critical, so to speak.
Situation log updated.
Alright, so what just happened just now was 10 years is up since the start of the game. I started at 2200, and now I'm at 2210. So there will be an election for a new leader. So my last leader had fulfilled his mandate. Oh no, maybe he hadn't. Oh no, okay. So my last leader did fulfill his mandate. I have a new mandate of getting research bases. So I need 4 research bases before 10 years is up. However, if I look at my leaders, my last leader of my entire civilization was a governor, and which means the new leader was a researcher. So one of my researchers, I'm switching governors because the guy that was leading my entire alliance of Triac Prime, well, let's call this Alliance of Triac, lost the re-election. And the guy that was hired was a scientist, so that scientist needs to be replaced. Fortunately, I have a lot of very good scientists I can hire. I just need a little bit more energy to do it. I need 200, and I'll amass that soon.
Construction project concluded.
I'm actually going to, I'm going to cancel the research base that I queued up, because I'd rather have the colony ship, which I'm getting right now. This colony ship takes a little while to build. When it's built, I will have to support the colony ship with some minerals, with 8 minerals, or 8 energy, excuse me. And if I don't supply that energy, I start to lose, my robots start to become less productive, and it becomes sort of a cascading effect from there. Certain mining bases will shut down, So if you start to go bankrupt, it's not like it's game over or anything, but a lot, your robots will lose power and become less productive, and then certain yeah, mining bases and research bases will shut down. I mean, it's really not
Research
something
concluded.
you want. So at this point, I just got. I would really like the machine template system. That looks to be a very good research to have, and I'm going to replace that scientist with one that has 10% research speed, so that I get this even faster. And then what I'll do is the scientist that was over here that got elected to be the leader, I'll replace with my rocket scientist, who then can start to go and survey again. Now, ideally, your surveyor should be someone that surveys fast or can find anomalies, but I don't have that as an option. None of my leaders have those bonuses, so I obviously would prefer that, but that's just not being offered to me. Now, if you can see this little upgrade arrow, that means that there are buildings on this planet that can be upgraded, and it happens to be that this science lab can be upgraded. However, the science lab can only be upgraded as an engineering facility. I'd prefer the societal terrain to be upgraded to a biolab, but I just don't have biolab research completed yet, which means I'm going to ignore this upgrade arrow for the moment, and wait until I can do societal research lab there instead. I'm also not generating a lot of food. I'm almost just about breaking even.
Construction project
and then it appears to me that map the stars, which gives me additional anomaly finding capability, has just run out. But for now, I'm just going to keep. I canceled my surveyors, but then I realized I'd rather just keep surveying. Even if I find fewer anomalies, that's fine. I'll try to unlock map the stars again as soon as I can, as soon as when it makes sense.
system survey concluded.
So some of these anomalies are obviously. This one is signs of precursor activity, which means it will, once I'm done, checkmark one of the Voltauum artifacts. But it is quite expensive. So what just happened just now is I just got space piracy notification, which means there is a pirate base at Gomesia. So instead of trying to build a mining base there, I'm going to stop trying to spread there, and I'm going to instead build another Corvette. So I just started my first faction. So if we go to the faction screen, this is a scientific faction. So certain things will make your factions happy. So for instance, this faction becomes happier when I have research agreements with 3 foreign empires. It will also be happier if I have the discovery tradition unlocked, which I already do. And it will be happier if AI are allowed, which they already are. So anyone that belongs to this faction will have +7 happiness. So if we, for instance, look for someone that belongs to, there we go, a scientific faction, they have 72 happiness versus someone that will have 65. So additionally, factions will generate influence for you. So at the end of this month, you'll see an additional influence modifier attached to the faction. So let's see. I just encountered some neutral, non-hostile aliens, and they are an enclave. But looks like I have to explain factions and enclaves more in detail in another episode because I am out of time. So I hope I was as thorough as I could be for the first 11 years of a Stellaris Empire. I'm not really covering all of the fundamentals. I'm kind of playing as a let's play and trying to explain what I'm doing as I go along. So if you have additional questions, either seek out tutorial video series, and I don't have one for Stellaris, or drop me a line as a comment, and I'll try to answer it as accurately as I can. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you tune in next time. Adios!